Hey Flosstube, I'm Michelle. This is my romantic tangle, and I am going to do a finish parade of the projects I finished in 2020. Most of them in the first half of the year because as the months have progressed, I have been doing less and less stitching, and that is something I really hope to change in 2021. Pyramid of Skulls is absolutely one of my favorite finishes of the year. I got it off of Etsy, and it is 5 by 7 inches, I think. It is based on a painting by Cezanne. It was a nightmare to stitch. There is so much confetti and so much similar colors that while you're doing it make no sense, but it was this leap of faith, and I am so glad I stitched. There are symbols that are too close together that are complicated. It drove me batty. But I love it, and I will definitely buy other patterns by this company because they have some others that I want to stitch, and if all of the fighting and struggling gets me results like these, I'm okay with the fighting and the struggling. Next, we've got the Emerald Forest Sal by Owl Forest Embroidery. This was a free pattern, and I honestly did not expect to be able to finish this one because it's a different kind of big than I usually do. And I started stitching Dorothy's house in 2019 for Mania, and I honestly did not love Dorothy's house. I made some mistakes and had to pick them out, and it's me, no fault of the pattern. But then I got stitching on it, and I very quickly got obsessed. I finished it long after everyone else, but I am so glad I stuck with it. And yeah, my people need their faces, but the bulk of it's done, so I'm counting it as a finish. House of Roses by Stone Street Stitchery. I love this one. This one I started stitching, I think at the very beginning of lockdown, the first round of lockdown, because I remember watching an episode of and a half of Tiger King while I was working on it. Did not get any further with Tiger King, but I did finish the project, and this is the one that gave me the idea that I really like working on projects that are just one color. And that's going to be kind of a recurring thing for the rest of the year. Self-Isolating Bat is, I think, the first of the Be Well and Stitch patterns that I did. This one was from Night Spirit Studio. And I just adore it. I had a devil of a time with it because I don't think I gridded my fabric. All those swirls and roses and probably my state of mind at the time, it was complicated, more complicated than it probably should have been, but I adore it. This one is Lobster Bouquet. It is a free download from Ink Circles, and I started it as soon as Bendy Stitchy mentioned it in one of her videos. It has lobsters and flowers, and it's that single color thing again, and I love it. Here is Flowers in a Window. It is another one from Stone Street. Is it Stitchery or Stitchworks? I'm going to put links to everything in the description down below. It was another free pattern. It was a whole lot of fun, and like I said, I did not know how much I loved stitching single color projects sometimes. It doesn't have to be all confetti all the time for me, apparently. Then we've got The Key, another one of the Be Well and Stitch projects. This one from Barbara Anna Designs. I love the dress. Look at the colors on that dress and the patterns on that dress, and it just makes my heart sing. I actually started light before I started The Key, but then I got started on this dress, and I finished this one first because how could I not? Ripe Apples is one of the kits I got at Hobby Lobby on clearance a couple of years ago. It was there, and it was cheap, and it was pretty, and I wasn't paying too much attention to my decision, so I did not realize that this is on 10 count. And it's probably a good thing I didn't realize it's on 10 count because I would have shied away from that. It looks stunning. The shading. And the basket with all that brown confetti was a challenge and a half, but I love it. I am so glad I persisted through this one. And I think I'm going to frame it. I don't frame many things, but this one, I kind of want to have it on a wall where I can look at it.
Canner's Kitchen was a pattern that I found in a random old magazine from an estate sale. I started it just on a whim because it looked pretty. And I like still lives and I like kitchen stuff. And the shading on those pickles and those peaches, I love this, but it was a struggle to get past some of the charting errors that I found. I work from old patterns all the time, and this is the only time I've come up with a color error that I could not fix. But my buddies up at Acorns and Threads helped me figure out how to make my peaches not green. And this one was actually enough of a challenge that it has its very own Flosstube video that I'll put a link to in case you're interested.
Light is another one of the Be Well and Stitch patterns that Barbara Anna did. It's the fox in a dress, and I struggled a little with my fabric choice, and I do wish I had done something where the sparkles from that lantern would show up better. But overall, I love the dress. Give me animals in dresses and I will just stitch those all day long, apparently. And the color, just yay.
Be Well is another one of the Be Well and Stitch patterns that were released during the first lockdown. It is by the Blackberry Rabbit. I love bees, and it was a fun stitch. I had a heck of a time with those wings. I think I frogged and stitched one of them something like 4 times, and there's some color placement issues on the garland, but it was a cute little project and it was fun to stitch.
I had kitted up a Caledonian sky when I very first started cross stitching. Somehow I went out and bought anchor threads for this. This is the only thing I've ever stitched in anchor threads, and the pattern and the threads sat for a good 15 years. Before 2019, for my first year of Stitch Mania, I decided I'm going to start it. And I started it, and it was boring, and it was tedious, and I spent a lot of time wondering why I was stitching it. I don't love these big blocks of color. But I kept going, and then I was noticing as I picked up my son from work in the morning after his graveyard shifts, coming back to the house, our sky in the mountains really did have this kind of color blocked look to them. So I've got a new appreciation for this one. If I ever do the gallery wall I have pictured in my head, I will probably come up with a frame for it, but for right now, I am just kind of glad it's done. I think Plague Nurse is another one of the Be Well and Stitch patterns. I am almost positive she is. I love her. She is so Victorian. And I actually stitched a piece with a date in the year that corresponds with the date. I'm kind of proud of myself for that. This is another of the Night Spirit Studio patterns, and Amy from Amityville and I are going to be selling her Just One More Page in January, starting on the 1st. So I can't wait to get started on that one either. Witchy stitching, or it might be spooky stitching, is from one of the Just Cross Stitch Halloween issues. Audrey did hers and personalized it. And I knew I wanted to stitch this as soon as I got the magazine, but I kind of agonized a bit about that orange and whether I would like it or not. Turns out it really does pop, and I like orange more than I thought I did. Bendy Stitchy did this acceptance sampler as a fundraiser for the Michael J. Fox Foundation. I love it. Acceptance doesn't mean resignation. It means understanding that something is what it is and there's got to be a way through it. And when I started stitching it, there was some stupid little stuff around the house going on. And then a loved one had a cancer diagnosis. And then COVID. And the meaning of this thing changed so many times over the course of the year. I really thought that doing this one on linen was going to be beyond me, especially since I had the most horrible thrifted linen imaginable. But I finished it, and I love it. And hers is not charted for one color, but that was what the little voices in my head told me that I wanted to do, so that's what I did. And now I want to stitch all the samplers. I have magazines full of samplers, and I have linen, and I'm going to stitch more samplers. Plans for 2021. And my last little project was Spooky Hollow. I believe the company is Ghost Rocket Studios. It was an Etsy pattern. I found it because I was looking for a little headless horseman to work on so that I would have an excuse to go down and film at the covered bridge near our house, which is possibly a ridiculous way to choose your cross-stitch projects, but that's what I did. And I dyed the fabric with some RIT, had no idea what I was doing, came out with results that I really liked. And it was just a cute, fun project. I used some of that CXC that I got at the thrift store, so I have no idea what any of these colors are. They were unlabeled. They don't correspond at all, except for the black and the orange and kind of the basic intention of what the designer had, but they're not the colors he called for. And that is my finishes for 2020. I have got probably 30 projects that I am carrying forward into 2021, and I'm not feeling at all bad about that, because with the world the way it is right now, I am going to stitch what I want to stitch. It sounds like I was gushing about every single one of these, and I was, but the fact that I felt all gushy and happy about them is why they're the ones that were finished. Thanks for watching. I'm Michelle. This is my romantic tangle, and I'll be back with you with more videos soon.